nuclear tests and nuclear activities at Yongbyon, including uranium enrichment activities. Today's announcement represents a modest first step in the right direction.
I don't think that he's going to be able to convince the generals to give up their most destructive weaponry. You know, Karl Marx said, history repeats itself. Well, it's doing that right now.
Some officials in the Obama administration are calling this the Leap Day deal with North Korea, in which some 240,000 tons of food aid are being put on the table for the North Koreans. Republican Senator John Kyle is pushing back hard, saying the White House is breaking a promise not to provide these incentives in exchange for what he calls dubious commitments. Quote, "I'm deeply disappointed but not surprised by the about-face. This is just par for the course for an administration that has a demonstrated record of misleading Congress and disregarding U.S. national security." This is, of course, with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, who took over for Kim Jong-il. Back with the panel. Charles, what about this?
Leap Day deal, it's a fool's deal on two counts. Number one, we know they are going to cheat. Every time we've had an agreement with them, going all the way back to the Clinton agreement, what they'll call the framework agreement, we provide real stuff. Here's going to be 250,000 tons of badly needed food, which the regime needs in order that it survive. We give real stuff. We get in return promises, every single one of them, over 2 decades that they have not kept. And they've set up the violations in advance. They have actually said today that they will only carry out the agreement as long as talks proceed fruitfully. Well, that means at any time they can stand up and walk out and say that we are obstructing and break all agreements. But the second part is worse. Even if they adhere to the agreements, this is completely useless. All it does is stop the uranium enrichment, but they have a uranium and a plutonium program. The plutonium is untouched, and that's the program that actually has produced the nukes that the North Koreans have today. So it proceeds apace. There's no change at all. I think it's just a nice, soothing headline for administration in an election year. I think it's a folly.
AB, UNICEF says 80% of the kids in North Korea are malnourished. And this food aid is necessary, but these deals, we've done them before.
Right, and so the White House is really in a corner trying to explain how this is not a quid pro quo, and we have a policy of not negotiating disarmament for food, cooperation on disarmament for food, but that it just happens to be that this is a humanitarian need and they are responding to it. And as Senator Kyle points out, it is an exchange. And it breaks with their policy, and no matter how much they try to put it into other words and parse it, that's what they're doing. And of course, as Charles points out, the North Koreans have not only given themselves a caveat in their statements and only made it promises of a sort of a sliver of the whole nuclear operation, but they can at any time receive the food and then walk away.
The thing we don't know, Jonah, is the relationship between the new leader, Kim Jong-un, and the military leaders in North Korea, and what that really looks like. We don't know much about North Korea.
Right. I mean, it strains credulity to think that this sort of boy nerd king, right, he's 28 years old, is somehow going to be standing up to these generals who basically put him in power. The more likely thing is that this is the same thing we've been seeing for 20 years now, where they sell the same bill of goods to us over and over again, and we keep buying it. And let me just say, look, North Korea is a moral horror. And I think 100 years from now, the entire civilized world is going to look back on how we tolerated what goes on there far too long. I would rather have no deal on any of this stuff, because it is a farce. I agree with Charles entirely. And just do a Berlin-style airlift and just drop food in. Because when we give them food, they just give it to the military and the elite, and they continue to let the people starve. And it's outrageous that we perpetuate it.
I think this is an election year gimmick. I don't think it advances anything. We're not testing the new leader. I think Jonah's right. He's not in control. It's the generals. And if you're a general there, why wouldn't you accept the food that you need to prop up the regime and offer essentially nothing?
That is it for the panel.